The last thing we are going to look at today is how to algebraically determine the equation of a line. And we're going to look at this when we are given the slope as well as when we are given 2 points instead of the slope. So when we are given the slope and any point that lies on that line, doesn't matter if it's the y-intercept or if it's a different point, we can figure out what the equation of the line is algebraically. Okay, so our lines, the equation of a line is always going to look like y equals mx plus b. And we said we know m is our slope and b is the y-intercept. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in what I know. So you can either write it kind of how I did before where I showed them on the side, m equals x equals y equals b equals whatever, but I'm going to just show it a bit differently here. So this is how I typically write my solution. So I'm reading my question here. It says determine the equation of a line with slope of -2 that passes through the point 4, 5. Okay, so if my slope is -2, that's my m value, and it's going through the point 4, 5. So if we remember, a coordinate is written as x, y. So if I wanted to assign variables to these to be able to fill in, 4 would be my x value, 5 would be my y value. Okay, so what I'm going to do is from my equation y equals mx plus b, I'm going to sub those values in. Okay, so typically the way that I write this is I write let m equal -2, x equal 4, y equal 5. Okay, so you can write it like that if you want to. You could write sub in, or you could write them before how I kind of listed them to the side and then sub them in. It's up to you. As long as you're actually just putting everything in the right spot, then it doesn't really matter how you write that. Okay, so on my next line then, I'm going to have 5 here instead of y. I have -2 instead of m, and 4 instead of x. And in this case, we're always going to have just plus b, and it's always going to be b that we are solving for. Okay, so the nice thing about this is that as you practice, the steps are always going to be the exact same. Okay, so you're filling in your values here that I'm going to evaluate. So -2 times 4 is -8. This is still just b. I want to isolate for b, so I need to get rid of the -8 that's on the same side of it. So I'm going to add 8 to both sides, and I will have 13 is equal to b. Okay, so if I wanted to write the equation of my line, then I would just say therefore, you can write like therefore the equation, but I just usually write just therefore y equals, my slope we said was -2, so -2x plus 13. Okay, so when we're writing the line, again, we remember we don't need to put a y or x value in for the actual equation because we can use the equation for any coordinates x and y. So that is the equation of the line that goes through 0.45 and has a slope of -2. So kind of just the general steps here. When you're given a slope and a point, you are going to sub in m, x, and y into your equation, y equals mx plus b, and then you are just simplifying and isolating for b. And then the important piece to remember is once you have found b, you're not done, you need to state the actual equation. Okay, so I often see people will solve b, they would say, okay, b is 13, done, but I'm asked to state the equation. So then we are going to just state the equation, that's just short form for equation, y equals mx plus b with m and b filled in. Okay, so the steps are kind of always the same, so once you've practiced it, it becomes pretty easy. You just need to make sure that your algebra skills are top-notch so that you don't make any mistakes when you are isolating. Okay, so that's how I determine the equation algebraically if I know the slope. However, sometimes I will not give you the slope, but I will give you 2 points instead. Okay, so if I look at my next example here, if I were to give you 2 points that are on a line and ask you to find the equation of the line that connects them. It's the exact same step exact same steps as what I had just written down. The only difference is that my first step is going to be finding the slope. Okay, so I'm going to use my equation for slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then other than that, all of my steps are the same. So I'm just going to copy this here and add a few things to it. Okay, so I would first need to find the slope because it's not given to me, but then everything else is the same afterwards. So my second step is I'm going to sub in my slope, and then I'm going to sub in x and y into my equation, y equals mx plus b. In this case, because you're given 2 points, you'll have 2 options for x and y, but again, like we saw in the collinear, how to determine if the points are collinear, it doesn't matter which point you use for your x and y. And then so you'll sub in those values, simplify and isolate for b, and then lastly, you'll state your equation with m and b filled in. Okay, so there's just that one extra step of finding the slope first, but because we practice that and we know how to do that confidently, it's not an issue. Okay, so if I look at an actual example of this, I want to find the equation of the line that passes through the points -4, 24, and 6, -26. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is, again, I like to just write my x1, y1 here to make sure that I'm using the points correctly. Okay, a common mistake that I see is that people write this as x1, x2, and y1, y2, but that's not right because we know that the equation has to be x, y. Okay, so I'm going to find my slope. Actually, I'm going to show this story like this. First step is find my slope. Okay, so m is equal to, let's do -26, subtract 24, and that is over 6, subtract -4. Okay, so again, here we've got a situation where we are subtracting a negative, so we just need to be careful with the signs. Because even just the numbers on top are larger than maybe what you're used to, it's totally fine to use a calculator to double check your work. So -26 subtract 24 is -50. And then 6 subtract -4 is really 6 plus 4, so that would be 10. And then I'm going to simplify. So -50 divided by 10 is a nice number, so we don't need to leave it as a fraction. We can just write what the answer is there. So -50 divided by 10 is -5. Okay, so that is my slope. So then my second step is just to make my equation. So I'm going to just write y equals mx plus b. Right, I'm making my equation, and again, I'm just going to sub in m and then values for x and y. So I'm going to say let m equal -5, and it doesn't matter which ones I pick for x and y. I'm just going to pick the first one. So x is -4, y is 24. You could use 6 and -26 as well. It doesn't really matter. It's just whatever you prefer. Okay, so then I'm going to have 24 is equal to -5 times -4 plus b, and then I'm just simplifying and isolating. Okay, so I'll still have 24 on this side. -5 times -4 is +20. Okay, so this is again what I'm meaning when I'm saying make sure that your algebra and your multiplication and division skills are good, that you've been practicing with them. Or again, use a calculator so that you make sure that you don't make any sign errors, because that's the most common mistake, is making something positive when it should be negative, or vice versa. And then we have plus b. Then I want to isolate b, so I need to subtract 20 on this side to get rid of it, and then subtract 20 on this side. So I will have 4 is equal to b, and then I can just state my equation. So therefore, y equals, we said the slope is -5, x, and then my b value is 4, so I'll have plus 4, and that is my answer. Okay, so now you know how to algebraically find the equation of a line, whether you are given the slope explicitly or if you are given 2 points on the line and you need to find the slope yourself first.